The brothers Wisp. The brothers Wisp, brothers Wisp. The brothers Wisp. The brothers.
You're now listening to Greg. It's the Brothers Wisp. Let's take a
Hey
ride
everybody,
through
this
space
is
on this
Greg Soul with the
mothership.
Brothers Wisp number 126. We have some familiar faces and a brand new face. So let's get going. Do I point the right direction? No. I always do it wrong in my overlay. Over here we have Justin Miller from Virginia.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Aha. Down
Yes.
here, wait, no, in that corner we have Mike Hammett from Chicagoland.
Hey, how's it going?
The same. How's it going? And then today, our new special friend is Scott Brown.
How's it going?
Excellent. Where are you from, Scott?
Richmond, Virginia. Born and raised.
Oh, you're in Miller's neck of the woods, which is not ironically, coincidentally, that's how we found you, right?
Correct.
So how would you rate his performance as a network engineer, scale of 1 to 10? Wait. No, just kidding.
Based
No.
on my skill set being a 1, he would be an 11.
Good man. All right. So, Scott, we are going to beat you up here in a little bit, but the name of the game is jump in whenever you can. If you hear something that you can contribute to or interesting, or you have some kind of rabbit hole you want to go down, let us know, man. So first, let's get the vegetables out of the way before we get to the dessert, right? That's the way I always had to do it when I was a kid. So one of my favorite parts, I guess maybe this is more the amuse-bouche because it's not really painful. This is the part I like. It's our new Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/brotherswisp, you throw us a couple of bones, you get access to our patron-only Slack, as well as you are helping support the podcast. And so this go around, we have 2 new additions. We have Matthew Ogden and Adam Tashner. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. Tashner?
Sure. Yeah,
Does that look right?
I tried to figure it out, and I don't know.
Yeah. This is the part where I mess up everybody's name, Scott. So it's pretty par for the course. But definitely thank you guys for the support. So I'm going to do the Cambium plug today. It's the exact same old ePMP bundle that you know and love, and you've heard me talk about probably, I don't know, 10, 15 times at this point. But $6,000 value, you're getting it for $2,000. You get 6 months of Visp.net automated billing. You get RF elements, twist horns, and you get 2 hours of one-on-one with an ePMP network engineer. And you get to do a little AMA session with him. Ask me anything, nothing off the table. You ask him what his favorite color is, what he had for breakfast. Doesn't really matter. They're going to answer it. And then Miller today is going to do the QuickBit promo. Let's hear it, bud.
QuickBit.com has indoor and outdoor 60 GHz kits that are just set it and forget it. Simple, crazy feature set for the price with API, filament tools, solid distance, and up to 8 clients per hub. And this K60C is now on the site, right, Greg?
Yeah, absolutely. Great job, bud. And that's QuickBit, KWIKBIT.com. Mikey, your turn. Tower coverage.
I might have to start tuning in about 10 minutes into the start of the podcast.
Fashionably late.
It brought to you by Sonar, a scalable, intuitive, and comprehensive ISP billing and operational support system. Learn more at Sonar.software.
Oh, I thought Mikey was going to get tower coverage because it's the long one. He went for the short one. But tower coverage, towercoverage.com. It's your RF propagation system to empower your network real-time data metrics, enable your coverage area, reaching your customer base, and more. The industry's best RF propagation mapping system allows website integration for customer sign-up and pre-qualification. Here's my favorite part. Use this data to scientifically plan network expansion and help your WISP succeed. Go grab a free trial over at towercoverage.com. All right.
I should ask Dennis if you subscribe to Tower Coverage if they send you a lab coat for that scientific network planning.
Maybe a custom pocket protector. It's got their logo on it, something like that. Make you feel cool. Part of the cool guy gang. All right, Mikey. Looks like we've got some complaints from you here. So
yeah.
The first thing on the list is NG911 Pains. I didn't even know there was a new version of 911. So why don't you enlighten us? First, tell us what NG is compared to the regular 911.
To the new or next. I think it's next generation.
Next gen. Sounds cooler.
911. And what it kind of well, everyone has kind of their own definition of it, but the intent is to take advantage of mobile phones that have been around for 20 years with texting capabilities and video capabilities and such, so that you don't actually have to call 911 to communicate with them.
I have an emergency. LOL. Got it.
It's a,
Emoji icon.
Fire emoji.
Skull
Fire
face, skull
emoji.
face.
it's more like I had I thought it was silly at first, but I was like, okay, well, somebody who's deaf would rather text than call. Somebody who, there's someone breaking into your house, you're not going to want to call them and, hey, I'm under the bed and blah blah blah. Text them. Someone broke into your house, but so traditionally there's what's called a selective router that the dominant incumbent phone provider in your area typically hosts. And what that is all the phone providers in your area get PRIs into this selective router, and then it passes the call off to the correct call center. They call them PSAPs, Public Safety Answering Point or something like that. So that way you get routed to a call center that actually can dispatch police, fire, so on for your area. And it's all local, and it's all very compact and geographically limited. At least in our area, our conversion to NG911 is now going to be made redundant instead of just a single location to connect to. Being 60 miles west of Chicago, we get to connect to St. Louis or Chicago, which then just connects right back to our county to connect to the actual police stations. Which makes no sense to me. How is the 911 system going to be more resilient by now traveling round trip 400 miles to facilitate the connection? Which doesn't make any sense. Seems like it'd be less reliable to me. But alas, that's what we're supposed to do. So we've got to, in our scenario anyway, we've got to buy waves to 2 facilities that we would not otherwise need to go to, just to facilitate 100 kilobits worth of 911 voice traffic. So that's annoying.
So who actually has to deal with this stuff? Like, if I'm just like a dude getting, stuff off of like a standard VoIP provider, do I even need to think about this?
No. Just voice selects, people that run their own voice switches. So like VoIP MS is pretty popular, and they use a variety of upstreams, level 3, IntelliQuint, so on. It would be the level 3s and IntelliQuints and so on that would have to build this support for VoIP MS, which then sells the service to you. One of my companies, we have our own voice switch, and we have our own PRIs to the current selective router, so we have to make all these changes to accommodate this new idea.
Do you guys actually do like POTS lines out to people?
Oh yeah, we've got a couple hundred POTS lines.
Oh, that's right, because you're doing DSL and stuff, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
So it's just it just seems silly to me that by improving something, it's as we'll kind of go into a little bit about IXs later, it's like it's kind of anti-IX. Like IX is making everything closer together and interconnect closer, so you don't go to some faraway market and all the problems associated with that. They're kind of going backwards with the 911 system.
When I think about POTS lines and stuff, I was thinking about when Miller and I were at that broadband summit thing. They were talking about, yeah, they were talking about like in New York after I can't remember which hurricane, but it tore. I mean, it basically devastated.
Sandy, I think, right?
Sandy. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it devastated a lot of the copper plant up there, and the incumbents basically said, we're not rebuilding it. And so I was just curious, like you said, you have a few hundred POTS lines. If there was some natural disaster that took out the I don't know, say 50% of your copper plant, would you guys actually repair that, or would you just pivot and go like fiber or try and do something else. I'm just like, I've never had the opportunity to talk to somebody who does old school, like real CLEC stuff.
Sure. Well, so for us, being that we're using this as a CLEC, it wouldn't be our responsibility to fix. That would be upon Frontier.
Oh, right, because you're just the competitive one.
Yeah, which means that if they're responsible for doing it, it means it's not going to happen. They've, one of their fiber lines in the area, they mismarked it by about 4 feet, and so we hit it when we were building by it. And so now for 3 months or so, they've got the handholds and conduit sticks with fiber ran through them, just sitting in a lawn. Like, all the dirt piles, all the holes, all still there. They're not, if you think it's bad when they don't install your service drop correctly or timely, this is like a pretty big deal for them on a fiber plant, and it's been 2 or 3 months just sitting there. So yeah, if they lost their copper plant due to some natural disaster, I can't really say they'd have it fixed in any fashion anytime soon.
That would be that. Yeah, right. It's like, have you thought about that? Like, what would you do about your DSL customers that are hanging off that stuff? Just void their contract and say, sorry for it. Yeah, I mean, it's like, what can you do, right?
Well, and part of that's why we started building our own fiber plant, because Frontier was just so unreliable that we couldn't have our destiny in someone else's hands. So we just started building it, and we're not going to build fiber everywhere. We have a copper plant now because some areas there are already 2 competitive fiber players, so there's no point in us building another one to serve residential. So we'll just go somewhere else.
Yeah, speaking of Frontier, I had it was like a couple of days ago. I had my old Frontier rep call me. I haven't talked to her in a really long time, and she was like, "Oh, you're not at that place you're at before?" And I was like, "No, I've moved on. I'm not really actively seeking circuits right now." She goes, "Man, I gotta find a new job." She was like, "Man, doing sales for Frontier, this is killing me. This is awful." And I was like, "Man, that's pretty rough." She goes, "Yeah." Just like, I thought she was joking at first, but no, she was like completely serious. So I guess sales for Frontier is probably not well, I say that. Sales for Frontier is probably better than sales for Solarwinds right now, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But it's got to be pretty rough.
Actually, I hear there's a lot of job openings.
Or there's a lot of people on the market looking for jobs, possibly.
That was a tough one.
Woof. So, Mike, what else do you have on here? You have 60 gigahertz and Terragraph. I know absolutely nothing about this, so you'd have to talk to me like I'm 5 on that one.
And so this is just meant to be a somewhat short rant, and actually I should have led with this before the 911 stuff. I got a complaint on the on our Twitter that all I do is complain about ubiquity. It's like, clearly you don't pay attention enough. I complain about everybody.
Everything.
I was like, I've complained about Zone far more than ubiquity in the past few months, and I'm going to complain in this one and not have a single complaint about ubiquity. Actually, leading into the 60 gigahertz Terragraph, it'll be somewhat of a complement to ubiquity. So, for all the press, all the fanfare, all the marketing being poured into Terragraph, oh my God, Terragraph's this greatest thing. It's like the 5G of the WISP world, in that it's like it's gonna fix everything. Just give it a minute.
I thought you meant by 5G of the WISP world it was going to give us COVID.
Maybe it will. Maybe it will.
Okay.
So, from what I understand, Terragraph is mostly just some Facebook software added on top of an array of 802.11ay chipsets, which is the successor to AD. And the software's nothing to do with the radio itself. It's all in the, in how it's handling and meshing and whatnot of the data. What seems to have happened to it is what happens when most anyone in Silicon Valley decides, let's get into telecom. They don't really know what they're doing, and they reinvent the wheel. So 60 gigahertz a number of years ago basically doubled the spectrum allocation that is available to us. It was 57 to 64 gigahertz. Now it's 57 to 71. And why that's important, other than capacity purposes, is the higher frequencies actually have much better range. Terragraph chips don't support the higher frequencies. So what's most exciting about, so if you're going to be doing, like the intent with Terragraph is to, build out entire neighborhoods. But they don't have the link budget to actually do it. These AOI chips also have less transmit power than some of the AD chips did. So it's like, so there's no RF, or there's little to no RF benefit from going to Terragraph. You're going to have shorter ranges than traditional gear.
Is this the stuff that they had touted, you'd be putting on like electrical poles, running down the street sort of thing?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and in some of the Facebook conversation I saw, the block spacing in this one area was you would have to not only put one at each corner, but then also one in the middle because the blocks were longer than what the range of the system would accomplish.
I guess maybe street lights. That'd be a better target for that.
Sure, but it's like they're.
I don't have street lights in my neighborhood.
Really?
No. Yeah.
You're on the bad side of the tracks.
No.
Oh, he is south of the river in Richmond.
I'm south of the river, yeah. No one north of the river comes down here.
Just one of those things where it's like, sort of like Google Fiber when they thought they were gonna, have these major breakthroughs in how to do everything much better, and really they ended up just doing the same thing everybody else does once they tried to do it. So this is, I think, just in an earlier stage of, we have all this cool software stuff we're gonna do, but yet no one actually thought about the underlying RF physics. How do we make this actually work?
You got to figure out how the incumbents are going to sync it as well, like they did with Google Fiber.
There was someone on the design team, engineering team, that was voicing the concerns and was overruled.
Well,
don't worry about physics. Don't worry about the physics stuff. We don't care.
I'm sure the incumbents. I heard. I think Google Fiber in Tennessee had 50,000 open make-ready moves that were never processed. It was thousands and thousands of them.
Yeah. It was the incumbent basically killing him and just not helping out in a lot of areas as well. Which, I'm not incentivized to really assist you in this endeavor, so obviously, why would I? Makes a lot of sense.
The tough part is that they're regulated, for make ready and all that kind of stuff. That's a tariff thing. And they were sort of playing the rules.
I think they're playing the game of, how brazen can I be in blocking this before someone actually fights back enough regulatorily, and seems like a few times they overestimated how much they had to work with, and there were laws passed saying, okay, here's a shot clock, or one touch make ready, or this or that, where the incumbent was too arrogant, and then they got slapped a little bit. It's like,
well, Richmond's got a unique story about that. We had a CLEC come in that connected a bunch of fiber and had the fiber right outside the central offices of the local incumbent. And the governor announced, I think they had a press conference the next day and said, hey, here's our first phone call placed on this new CLEC fiber ring. And the local incumbent went, didn't have any idea that they pulled all the fiber on all the poles, and they went, "Oh, we forgot to get permits. Go ahead and charge us the penalties."
Awesome.
And they actually, that's exactly how they got it installed. In fact, I think it was a company from Chicago area that came to Richmond that did that. But they pulled all the fiber on the poles before anybody realized. And then they had a big press conference with the governor going, "Hey, let's make our great first phone call." And they were like, "Oh, whoops, forgot the permits. Whoops, sorry."
Oh, man, that reminds me of, who were those jokers? It was Fiberlight. Fiberlight was pulling in redundant connectivity, and so I think they rode our conduit that went under UPAX, Union Pacific, the railway, on one, and then they were having problems with UPAX getting permits to get across. I mean, they're notorious, at least in our area, they're notoriously bad about that stuff. So they showed up at I think 1 a.m. to just start their work with no flagger, no nothing. Well, they had, apparently, somehow UPAX caught wind of it and called the feds, and everybody in that crew got arrested and thrown in jail, and that fiber never got pulled through. That was 7 years ago. They just stopped. Not only that, but they stopped all of their operations in Texas temporarily while they figured out what was going on. So that was like, I guess that's messing with the railroads, a little bit different than messing with a municipality. That's...
Yes.
I have heard of people like I haven't done it because it's long and dreadful, but it's very like there's a plan, it's published, and they follow it. It's just there is no how they're going to screw with me. It's just exactly what they say is going to happen up front is what happens. So you just got to go with it.
Yeah.
But I have heard people that have gotten extra, like, larger drills than they would need so they could go longer distances, and they just sat back like 500 feet or 1,000 feet away from the rail and then just went way low, and because there was no disturbance anywhere near the track, no one was ever the wiser.
Yeah, because they basically own straight down for X number of feet and then straight up in the air X number of feet, as well as, right off the track, off the center of the track and stuff like that. So I guess theoretically, if you go deep enough, you're good. Just in our urban environment, that's not really practical. There's way too many utilities already running through all those easements and stuff. So they took a chance and they lost.
Like in this case, like I think they went something crazy, like 50 feet or 75 feet down. Like there's no one else down there, and you're like, and I've heard like they actually leave like, because I know when you're running the drill, like you put like little white dots where the drill head is to kind of make sure that you're going in the intended direction. Well, when you don't want to indicate that you were actually there, they put down quarters or like coasters or some other sort of circular thing that they can just pick up and walk away with when they're done, so that no one actually knew that they were there doing anything. It's like, wow, that's I guess if you gotta do what you gotta do, but I don't know that I would take that risk.
Yeah, I'm sure most of the WISP guys listening to this have taken a chainsaw to a tree in the middle of the night once or twice to get stuff done.
Little RF adjustments.
Yeah. Oh no, that tree fell over. I don't know what happened. Oh man. So what was the ultimate goal of the Terragraph conversation? That you think it's not the end all be all? You find there's shortcomings?
Sure. It's I don't think it's going to be anything worth looking at unless you're extremely dense until they improve.
I'm not sure which way to take that.
In what way?
It was that RF dense? Or?
Shots fired.
I didn't intend it to be that way, but now that I think about it, I guess either applies. You or your network are dense, but that or they get the higher frequency support and they get stronger radios and such, so that people could actually use it in a standard town deployment.
All right, Mikey. Next on the list, you have Microtik BGP notification script correction. What's the story on that?
So last show, I was talking about one of the guys in our Slack had dropped this script that would send you an email when your BGP sessions were having problems. And I don't remember the exact conversation that we had in the podcast, but it lent the impression that you would keep getting emails for the duration of the problem. And I was corrected. You just get one email when it goes down.
That's nice. Was that Chad that had that script?
I don't
Chad
remember.
Walks? I think I might have been. All right, well, good deal. So it's a good script. Jump in the Slack and grab it. How about your Microtik Proxmox CHR script?
It for a long time, I remember people complaining about having to run a bunch of do their own investigations to figure out what commands you had to do to convert what the CHR came in. Like at the beginning, it was pretty much just a I can't remember the name of the word now. Or
QCal
the name of the word.
2 Brawl
No, I think at the beginning it was just a
VDMK or OVA?
VMDK or an OVA, and so you had to do all these things to make it into a Proxmox format. Microtik themselves have actually added the software in more drive formats, including RAW.
Yeah.
But then Microtik have come up with a bash script that you run the bash script, you put in what version you want, and it downloads the correct version from Microtik, builds the VM, and then loads it into Proxmox for you.
That's nice.
That's cool.
So that takes a lot of that work out. A downside is that the URL they have in the script is wrong. So you get a 403 error if you try to download it. If you don't correct it.
It's a wiki and you can edit it, Mike.
I did try. I did try. I did try, and then I also put in a ticket saying, "Hey, this link, this page or this line is broken, and it should say this instead of this." And then no one responded. But I bet we'll get a response next week. And one other thing, I guess a feature request for that script. Microtik should ask how big the disk is that you want it to be, because they just make it like 32 megs or 64 megs or something like that. And it's really easy in Proxmox to adjust it, but while you have the script setting it up, why not just ask how big do you want the disk to be? And I guess the last thing on that for me anyway is I discovered that the script does not install the CHR into, if you have a ZFS file system, it does not install it into a partition, for lack of a better term, at the moment, that is easily migratable to other hosts. With ZFS, you've got file devices and block devices, and it installs it into the file device portion, which Proxmox doesn't migrate. So then you have to do some work to move it from the file device portion over to the block device portion, and then it's just as portable as any other VM in Proxmox.
Nice.
Sounds
Anything
like
to add?
Sounds like we should write a playbook for this, Greg.
I don't have Proxmox in front of me anymore.
I'll write this into Proxmox and give it out.
While we're mentioning, how have your adventures in Ansible been going?
It's been going pretty good, other than the whole AWX Galaxy issues that I ran into, which I still haven't gotten past, but I'm just using Ansible command line right now at home. On Proxmox, you can launch a LXC as a in the templates. They have turnkey Linux, and they have an Ansible version in there, and they also have a Git labs turnkey. So if you just fire up a LXC Ansible and then fire up a LXC GitLabs instance, that's all you really need to like really start getting going with doing any kind of deployments. So I've gotten it. So I download a copy of Debian 10 OpenStack, convert it, import it as a template into Proxmox, add cloud int support, and then once that's a template, I got another playbook that'll actually clone it and make a VM using a VM ID and an IP and a username and a password and a public key and all that, and it just adds it all in there using cloud int, increases the disk size and starts it up. So I got that going. It's pretty neat. It takes about 2 minutes to run through and create the template and make a VM. And then I've gotten playbooks made for WireGuard. And then in addition to installing WireGuard, it installs WG GenWeb, which is a front end for WireGuard, which is kind of nice. And they have a portion where if you make a change in the web GUI, there's a path watcher script in the host OS that restarts WireGuard to make those changes active. I added in there an option just to check in my WireGuard config into the GitLab every time I make a config change. So it just pushes it up every time. So I got automatic backups for that. So that's kind of cool. And then the other one I did was wikijs.org, which is a open source wiki that we're looking at using. So that's kind of cool. And then all the Minecraft stuff that our buddy is doing on
Zach Biles.
Zach is doing those on. He's got Bedrock Minecraft server installation and then Java version server installation, which is kind of cool. The Bedrock one was neat because that works with the Xbox and Windows 10 version. Cool. It's not the Java version of Minecraft. It's the console version. So it works with everything but the Switch. And you can get it to work with the Switch. You just have to do some DNS hijacks and basically make the DNS IPs that return for the built-in servers be the one you want to connect to instead. So there's workarounds, but it's not kid-friendly for sure.
Gotcha. So there's blocky nudity is what you're telling me?
Yeah.
That kind of not kid-friendly. All right, that makes sense. All right, let's see what else. All right, so what's your wiki? I mean, how did you settle on that wiki as opposed to like Media Wiki or something like that?
Xavier, our developer, sent it to me. He said it was a pretty cool wiki, that if he was going to start using a wiki, this is the one he would want to use. So I looked at it and it had enough database backends and plugins and extendability, and it's all based on JavaScript. So it looked really cool. Had a lot of authentication backends. Database backends are handy too. So I haven't really gotten too much into it. I've gotten them installed and made a couple pages, but haven't had time to get into the whole database side. We want to make a knowledge base that's database driven. So as you go between the pages, the information changes, but kind of like you used to be able to do in FileMaker back in the day. Like easy to use databases.
At FiberTown, I used MediaWiki, which is the same thing that Wikipedia runs on. Yeah.
Microtik uses that too. So.
Wikipedia. Yeah. It worked pretty well for us. There was some kind of WYSIWYG plugin we ended up using that made it a lot more user-friendly. I still wish you could have a wiki that was like a Google Doc or something, right? Where you could just like copy and paste a picture in and do all that stuff. It's always like a pain in the butt. You got to like put the picture in a file and do all this.
Wikijs does all that stuff.
Oh, see, that would be nice.
A lot of WYSIWYG editing, different editors you can do, supports Markdown and all kinds of stuff. So
I just want to be able to paste in pictures. So that would make it so easy.
Yeah. Well, there's Google Docs for you for that.
I know, right? It's like, just make Google
If
Docs
that's more
your
your
wiki.
speed,
Who cares?
you can stay over there.
At Red Hat, that's kind of my wiki. I know they've got like an internal thing or whatever, but it's like when I need something, I just go into into my Google Drive and search, and I'll find like tons of stuff. So it's really cool. I can just grab slide deck, steal this slide, steal that slide. It's cool. I haven't had to actually make. I've had to make like a total of 5 slides. Everything else, like we have a marketing department that makes everything, and I can just steal from them, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel, which is really nice. All right. So some new news that they had coming out of, this is very Microtik heavy one, and everybody complains that we talk too much about them. But I wanted to get this one out there because I wanted to do a little complaining. Microtik released a REST API for version 7, which is cool. I mean, it's a step in the right direction. But from my understanding, it's not idempotent. I've heard somebody pronounce it idempotent. I don't know. I've always heard it idempotent. So to me, that's what that means. And really, in essence, it's a concept of I have a steady state, right? Like I keep it in a config file, right? So I've got a source of truth. It's right here. It's this configuration file, and it's got all my firewall rules the way they should appear. And idempotent means I can run a piece of automation and say, hey, make that device, that Microtik over there, make his firewall rules look like this, right? Are they the same? Yes. Then don't do anything. Are they not the same? Okay, make it so, right? If you need to remove things, remove things. If you need to add things, just do it. Make them look identical. And the new REST API doesn't have that functionality, right? From what I understand, it's just an extension on what's already there. It just allows you to use kind of JSON, which is nice. The JSON formatting and automation, it's either really JSON or YAML or converting in between the two, right? So Ansible is really YAML heavy, but you can read from JSON or push from JSON, or it's just a data structure. So I would really love if anybody from Microtik is listening. For people who are heavy users of automation, like all of the customers I talk to, this is what they want. They want to define what the state is supposed to look like. They want the automation to push that to the device, and they want the device to understand that and take it upon itself to do it. So in our lab, we've been writing some modules that are idempotent for Microtik, but you've got to start doing all this kung fu to make it work, right? And ultimately, I guess you could try and write your own custom modules, but I would really rather have the manufacturer take care of that for me so that I could just announce what the state should be and have the device make it. So, I mean, just think about how you could template things, how simple life would be if you could just maintain your firewall rules, your master rules in like your Git repository, and then just have your automation push to that via a hook call whenever you make an update or something.
So an example would be like, through the API, you add the IP address 192.168.1.1/24 on Ethernet 1, interface 1 or whatever. You run that script again. If it was idempotent, it wouldn't do it again. If it is not, it would just add that IP address in there or error out.
Yeah.
IP address already exists.
Yeah, say for example, it has that 192.168.0.1. It's on the interface. Well, now I want it to Ether1. I want it to have 192.168 10.1 and 11.1 on that interface. It'll look at that. It'll say, oh, 0.1's not supposed to be there. Remove that. Add these two in its place. You rerun the script. It'll say, hey, those two are already there. Don't do anything, right? So it will actually remove things that shouldn't be there. And then it's basically you're defining the state it should look like. It's not just pushing out configuration commands like, hey, add this firewall rule or add that firewall rule, right? It's because then you have to start thinking, well, how do I shuffle these things around? What order are they going to be in? Where do I move things? If you define the state that it's supposed to look at, or rather look like, it's so much simpler to drill this stuff automatically.
That state, it doesn't rip everything out and then replace. It adds or removes as needed. So if you were communicating over an IP address and it ripped that out, the communication would die while it's trying to make other updates. But if it didn't do it that way, it didn't rip everything out at one time and just removed specifically, then it's safe. So
push it as a bulk command. This is what it looks like. Boom, make it there. Not remove it and then add one thing at a time, one after another, which is kind of currently how it sort of does things. So I definitely love the direction they're going, the RESTful API. Ansible has the URL module that's basically made to work with RESTful APIs just in this format using JSON, right? So I love the direction they're going. Now it's just take that next step. right? So that automation engineers really, I think everybody is utilizing automation in some form or fashion. And the more tools that will support easy automation, the more people are going to start adopting automation, and it's really going to allow them to do things in a big way, much simpler. We've all seen various tools that will allow you to like do updates, right? You can do mass configuration updates and things like that, but you got to think 2 steps down, right? So imagine your automation will make your environment look a specific way, but then it will also do pre-tests, it'll do post-tests, it'll do smoke tests, it'll connect to various things, it'll try and browse through that, right? It's not just apply it, cross your fingers, hope for the best. You can actually do a lot of additional research, a lot of work, a lot of information gathering. I mean, sky's the limit. Anything a human does, your automation is going to do it, but it's going to do it way better and faster than you can do it. So give us the tools we need to make this stuff happen. And Microtik's working with Latvian Telecom now in like a big way.
Mm-hmm.
You got to think those guys want this feature, right? They want just like their Cisco kit, their Juniper kit, their Arista kit, their Extreme, every other vendor that supports idempotent configuration. You got to figure that they want their Mikrotik stuff to do that as well.
Well, you got to laugh. I heard a story the other day about this young gentleman that went to go buy a hot fudge sundae at McDonald's, and the ice cream machine was broken. So he wrote a little application to purchase hot fudge sundaes, and it queried all the McDonald's within 100 miles every 10 minutes and placed an order for hot fudge sundae. And then if it came back and let him order it, it then showed that ice cream machine was working. If it wouldn't let him place the order, it would show the ice cream machine was down. So on average, he was placing, I want to say, tens of thousands of dollars in orders a day for hot fudge sundaes and canceling them. And he had a real-time app for a 100-mile radius where he lived to show which McDonald's hot fudge sundaes ice cream machines were functioning, and which ones were not. So hopefully, like you said, some of the manufacturers will embrace this. It looks like McDonald's is going to add real-time to show that ice cream is available or not available, because this young gentleman sort of assisted him in
the way. now, if we could just get that with Slurpees, oh man, specific flavors,
That's amazing.
Could you imagine the McDonald's programmer that worked for the corporation going, we got $50,000 of orders every day in the Chicago area, and they get canceled 60 seconds after they're ordered, and it's been going on for months. I'm confused at what's going on.
From one particular person, should we ban that person? I mean, wow.
That reminds me of 2 stories. One is I heard about the Waffle House Index, and it's apparently what like FEMA uses to see when areas are kind of like recovering a little bit after a hurricane or something like that, because it's when does the Waffle House in that area open back up, and that's like an indication that they have power, they have water, right, and then their employees can get to and fro from their houses to their place of employment. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. But the other thing that pops into mind is that every time I go to McDonald's, the ice machine is broken, and it aggravates me. And then I remember they started offering dipped cones. And so I couldn't wait to get one. I don't remember the circumstance, but we were like out of town and I was traveling, and we went through the drive-thru and they gave me a dip tone. And for whatever reason, the chocolate was like screwed up. Like it was just wet and dripping. And I looked at it, and as we were going through the drive-thru, I just screamed. I don't remember what the expletive was. And then I just threw it on the ground like an angry child and drove away. Because I was just
quite mature of you.
I had been waiting on that. I'd been waiting on that ice cream for like 2 weeks. I've been thinking about it. I'd been planning, and finally everything came together, and it was wrong. It was ruined. Ugh. Worst day ever. That's awesome, though. I love that. I love ingenuity of humans, not the crappiness of McDonald's ice cream, but the ingenuity of humans never ceases to amaze me. All right, let's talk about one more thing, and then let's talk to Scott about all his crazy, wacky, wild stuff. So the Solarwinds breach, that's all anybody has been talking about the last few days. I think, what did that happen on the 13th? The first announcement, or
I
or
think
what
it's been
have you.
ongoing for a while, actually.
Oh, yeah. The breach, the breach has been underway for a while, but I guess the official news announcement. So I think I'm going to distill this into like 20 seconds, and then somebody else who's more savvy can talk about it. So from what I understand is the supply chain for Solarwinds got somehow compromised, and in the package updates for is it the Orion stuff, where it's like kind of a homogeneous environment where you kind of snap in pieces to, I guess, very like they have the NCM, the backup, and then you kind of have the different monitoring piece, all these pieces that kind of snap into that framework. They had gotten compromised. It was installing like a backdoor. I think that's how FireEye got compromised, and ultimately how the U.S. government got compromised. But man, I bet those guys, I mean, that's like having your birthday, Christmas, Thanksgiving, winning the lottery all in one go, compromising that SolarWinds. I also heard that something like 90% of the Fortune 500 also were impacted by the SolarWinds breach. So I think it's going to be a long time before we see how far reaching that compromise really was. Although maybe they didn't have enough resources to really track down all, like when you have, like that vault, like Scrooge McDuck's vault, like you don't have time to go through and look at, each and every little piece in there. You just don't have the manpower. Well, maybe they automated it. Maybe the ice cream, the McDonald's ice cream guy got in there.
Figure out what IPs you have and then like pull up the ASs and see what's interesting, like which IP spaces or which businesses and which ones might be fun. I mean, that's what I would do.
Well, I'm just thinking,
but
you got to maximize your time too, because you don't know how long you're going to go undetected, right? Like how
months.
Well,
but
yeah, but so how do you pick which ones you hit? Because I assume they have limited manpower inside of this group that actually did the breach, right? So it's like, oh my God, I got everything in front of me right now. It's like the greatest schmore. It's like walking into Willy Wonka's factory and you got to figure out what you're going to eat first. It's like, oh my God, it's also delicious, So it's
wouldn't you want to like use that beachhead that you have to compromise another product that's well used, another supply chain?
Oh yeah, like FireEye that does evaluations of people's networks.
It's got their entire toolkit of everything for penetration testing. They got their entire private toolkit, which I
didn't read about this one, so
yeah. So not only that, but I'm assuming if they had the keys to the kingdom, they probably had all the testing results from all the different customers, so they knew all the vulnerabilities that maybe still hadn't been plugged on said customers. So they would have had the ability to then start attacking those targets as well. So it's pretty bonkers. Which one of you guys is more savvy on this? Because that's all I know about it.
I haven't actually read a whole lot about it, but I have firsthand experience with Orion Solarwinds, and it was garbage.
Yeah, I've used NCM. It was trash.
But, it was a long time ago, too. But it was bloated, MS SQL, Windows, slow software at the time. And it took a bunch of steps to add just a custom void in, it was not fun. Not a good user experience. SolarWinds seems like the kind of company that buys a bunch of stuff, does the bare minimum to brand it, and then releases it. Kind of like Zoho. I would expect Zoho to be the next company to maybe get hit. But they got the same business model. But, they bought the Cacti. What was it? Not the Cacti, but they bought some syslog software that was well known at one point. I forget the name of it, but I haven't really read the articles. I can't speak about that. I just know that they had SolarWinds 123 as a password apparently.
Oh yeah, on one of their public FTP servers. Yeah, it had read-write access.
That was a Kiwi syslog that you were thinking of.
Yeah, Kiwi. There you go.
Yeah.
Not Cacti, but Kiwi.
And from what I saw, like they were contributing to some GitHub that like had something to do with sort of a community around SolarWinds products, and right in the GitHub was the SolarWinds 123 password. That just walked right into their development environment. It's just like, it's like you might as well have published the password. I mean, it probably would have been less or more obscure if you were to post it right on your website, like solarwinds.com would probably have taken longer to figure it out than password equals blah in a GitHub. Like, it's just the silliest thing, and SolarWinds has like 18,000 customers apparently, and most of the Fortune 500, and apparently a whole bunch in the federal government, and it's like on and on. It's like you all got screwed over somebody dropping a password in GitHub.
Well, I mean, they're saying it might be that. I think I don't know that they've equivocally pointed towards what it was, but I think they're trying to show sloppy security practices, at least. Stuff like that. One is, posting passwords out on GitHubs, but apparently that's not an uncommon occurrence. I was going to say practice, but people don't mean to do that. But it's not an uncommon occurrence that happens sometimes. But just the fact that it's SolarWinds 123 is kind of bad that it had read-write access, because it seems like somebody could probably guess that. What I was thinking is after this was, one, we saw some people in the Slack talking about how they got cold called about, hey, we're from sales at SolarWinds. It's like, man, that is, it's like, I can't imagine worse timing.
End of year sales in before the end of the year, before the news breaks and everyone knows.
It's Q4 wrap up, man. I guess you're trying to get some last little bit of stuff in there. I'd be curious what kind of discounts you're offering right now. But one thing I was curious about is like to be a fly on the wall in their internal sales meetings where they're talking about this stuff. Just, at Red Hat, and this is all I'm going to say about it, but some of the meetings internally, there has been so much about this CentOS stuff, this change or whatever. I'm not 100% up on all of that, so I'm not going to talk about it because, I don't, I'm going to come off like an idiot. But we caught hell for that. As soon as the announcement went, I have not been in a single customer interaction where they did not bring it up. So, it's like, I can only imagine what the SolarWinds guys are going through now and will continue to go through. I'm wondering what's gonna become of them. Do you think they'll bounce back? You remember after the the Target credit card fiasco and stuff?
The Zoom stuff,
everybody just bounced right back.
Recently,
it didn't seem like
all the Zoom bombings and people getting into Zoom meetings and all that, that was a big security concern. They had to hire, I think they hired Moxie Mullenspike to come in and fix all their stuff. So it's a big, well-known name in the security environment. So it's maybe they'll do something. Maybe they'll have to do something in order to show that they're serious.
Right? They'll have to flog themselves publicly for a little while.
I do think it's funny though, and this is it's close to home a little bit, but the head of the the Security Institute of CISA? What is that?
CISA?
Yeah, CISA. Krebs. What was his first name? I forget. Anyways, Brian Krebs was the leader of that group, and he's got fired by Trump by saying that the elections were the most secure ever. Right?
Yeah.
And I can only imagine he's actually starting to get a lot of flack now from saying that, because now they're like, oh, were they really, because of the SolarWinds thing and the federal government getting hacked and everything? But what's funny is I work with his brother, Brian Krebs' brother. So
gotcha.
it's
really?
like really, it's funny, yeah.
Does he talk about how his brother's a dick all the time?
No. But I was like, my level of Kevin Bacon's to Trump is really small though. At one point was 2 people, But
how weird. Fascinating. So you could easily pass over a conspiracy theory if you needed to, or at least you could at the time.
Yeah. But I think that Brian probably did a pretty good job, and that this SolarWind thing probably had nothing to do with anything with elections, but who knows? But
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a while before we find out how far those ripples went. If we ever find out, because I'm assuming there's some people, if they think they can get away with not talking about it, they might just get away with not talking about it. I had a conversation one time. It wasn't it was in a group setting, but it was with I think it was like a lawyer or an insurance company, or a lawyer from an insurance company that covered people on cybersecurity stuff, and they were basically they were talking about how there's a lot of scenarios where you don't have to and don't want to divulge that there was a compromise of some sort. So people definitely jump through a lot of hoops, and I think if you can legally find some kind of interesting loophole where you don't have to talk about it, people are absolutely not going to talk about it. But I can understand why.
There's those canaries that some companies do about search warrants. So they'll have a statement that says, we've never been issued a government search warrant before. And if you see that message go away, then you know that they have, kind of thing. It's like a search warrant canary. They talk about it a little bit on Security Now. So
Interesting. Is that something to brag about?
I don't know if it is something to brag about, but
I wonder which industry
it
people
is,
are bragging about that.
Well,
I don't see the upside.
Yeah, no, it's not an upside, but it's a lot of people are interested when those kinds of warrants happen and what's in them and that kind of thing. So something to keep an eye out.
It's interesting. Yeah, I am woefully lacking on the security stuff. It seems like I'm chasing so many other things that I don't know, man. Like, there's so much limited space in my brain right now. To be honest, I've kind of quit reading the news. It's been like so depressing. Like, I quit reading before the election. Like, I was done. And I'm feeling so much better for not reading it. I'm thinking, I don't think I want to go back just yet. So I'm going to wait a little while longer, in fact. So I don't go chasing that stuff.
Yeah, I'd probably wait until February, March, like a couple months after the inauguration, if you're trying to avoid the bulk of the BS.
I was thinking 2022. Just move past next year and just wait till 2022.
Yeah, man. Well, Scott, while you've got you talking, let's interview you here. Let's interrogate you. Maybe is that the better word for it? No. So Scott Brown in Virginia, you happen to own this little place called the Pixel Factory, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about the Pixel Factory and how you kind of fit into that picture.
So you make like really big TVs?
Correct. Actually, close. We capture pixels. So early on, commercial photographer for 30 plus years, capturing images, created a automated system to store, retrieve images for corporate clients. There was nothing in existence about 18 years ago when we started, and so we started managing image libraries for large groups, and that grew and grew and grew. We had some hardware and some data centers around town. The one data center we were in got bought out by Paytech. Got bought out by Cavalier. Cavalier got bought out by Paytech. Paytech got bought out by Windstream, all within a 6-month period.
Yeah.
So it was, let's just say when you're the last one to the plate, and what you paid for the asset is severely inflated when it's a 6-month period and it jumped multiple times. And so if you're the last one to the plate, how do you correct that issue where you paid too much? You either start charging more or get rid of all the employees to lower overhead. And we left and moved, or we're going to move into another facility in town. And Richmond's a tier 2 market, and the pricing was just incredibly dispersed in range. I mean, just an amazing price difference. Less services, more money. And so we looked around the landscape and said, there's space for a middle tier facility in the Richmond market. And we broke ground on a facility and built it and been working on it ever since. And it's developed some legs of its own in the last 6 months with the big DE-CIX announcement. So it's been a heck of a ride, and been a heck of a learning experience over the process.
So let's reel it back a little bit before we get to the DE-CIX stuff. I want to just you said so. You personally are a photographer, correct? Correct.
I did commercial photography for 30 plus years. I did 18 years on contract with Sports Illustrated, shooting all kinds of different pro football, all kinds of sports. We were shooting for NASCAR, all the different groups, and storing images. And there was no good way. The Masters golf tournament. And it was just early on when we switched from film to digital, there was no easy way to store and retrieve. And it was like the running joke was, I'd get a call from a client going, I need 20 images for PowerPoint. And I'd go, okay, well, we'd go pull the files, scan the film. And that was incredibly costly. And I'd say, okay, well, your PowerPoint presentation's $1,000 because we had to scan a bunch of stuff and everything. And then so when we switched to digital, the same clients were saying, okay, well, give me 20 images. And come to find out, they only needed 3 or 2, and they just wanted 20 to choose from. And so we couldn't, at a certain point, you couldn't charge them, but so much. So we had developed this automated database system that would resize the large scale photos, scale them down to a 1024 768, apply an unsharp mask. When it shrunk it automatically, so the client could do it. And it was all the client needed to know. If it was a high-res photo, it ended with h.jpg or h.tiff. If it was a PowerPoint, it ended with p.jpg or tiff. And the client just needed to know 3 letters: web, PowerPoint, and high-res. And so we built that automated system. And, because we get calls and go, hey, I dropped your photos into my PowerPoint, and I left for lunch and came back, and 2 photos were still rendering in the PowerPoint because they were 100 meg TIFFs. So we had to build a better mousetrap when nothing existed. And so then that led to the larger storage, and then that led to, we looked at going to Ashburn because we're only 100 plus miles off, but I didn't want to commute to Ashburn to keep that infrastructure running and maintaining it. So we were in a facility across town. And when that facility got bought out multiple times in a 6-month period and went downhill, we broke ground on our facility and built it from scratch. And
so, are you still in that? Are you still in that business where you're storing pictures and doing the database and all that stuff? Yes, we still are. We have quite a few clients still. The data center side has taken on a bigger role, but we still have the exact same clients from, I think we've only lost one in the last 5 to 7 years because one of the race car teams closed up shop.
How much raw storage do you have for all that?
Actually, I lost track, to be honest. It kept going, and the number kept going up and up and up. I actually have no earthly idea. I know it's a lot of drives, a lot of SSDs.
I know you had that 24 terabyte. No, it's a 24 drive super micro chassis with the 2 terabyte drives in it.
We had multiple.
That was a backup. That was just backup.
We actually had. I think we had 6 of those, and those were just the replications of the data. It's been as coming from a creative field, jumping over into the technology, fully in the technology side, it's been a heck of a learning curve, tremendous learning curve.
Well, what got you into photography to begin with?
Basically, all through high school, my grades weren't that good, and I figured out that I didn't have to go to class, and I got a free pass, and the teachers really liked me. So that's pretty much how I made it through high school. So it was that got me out of that. My dad did it as a hobby, and as a young kid, if you wanted to go to the bathroom, we had one bathroom in the house. If my dad went in to print pictures in the bathroom, if you wanted to use the restroom any point during the night, you basically had to go in there with him because it had to be dark. So as a young kid, it's like, okay, I know I'm gonna have to pee in the next 3 hours, so I'll go in and help my dad. And so that was the only, or leave the house, go to the neighbor's house next door, knock on their door, and they go, is your dad printing pictures again? To use the restroom.
Gotcha.
So that's what got me hooked as a young kid.
Use the
You do
guest
realize-
bathroom. Use the kitchen sink. That's what we call it, guest bathroom.
The guest bathroom.
A large portion of the target audience may not know anything about developing photos.
Oh yeah, well that was back in the day. I mean, we haven't touched
Yeah.
chemicals and stuff in 18, 19 years.
He was essentially using your bathroom as a dark room, a black room,
Yeah.
because light would cause the photos
Oh, it
to
exposed the paper.
expose.
Yep, back in the
And
day.
so
yeah.
was it black and white or was it color?
Both. We did black and
my
white.
dad did black and white only.
Yeah.
So he
we
had
did
the big
color.
projector thing and the little
Yep.
tubs and the tongs, and it smelled so bad in the bathroom, like, chemical wise.
Yeah, for two reasons: the chemicals
yeah.
and
And number two, but it's, the red light and everything.
we had the safe
something
light, the colored light. Yep, as a kid.
very fondly remember my father doing as a when I was a child.
So, the photography part, when they had the presidential debate in Richmond, I believe it was Ross Perot, I can't remember what year, they had it was the first DCS-1 or what Kodak had, and it had a 10 meg hard drive that was like the huge platter. It took like 3 minutes for it to spin up to speed, and that was the first digital picture on Time magazine ever produced on a magazine cover. And I was there when we shot it. I think Ron Edmonds was the photographer for the AP that shot it, and I remember working on the cabling to connect this thing, and we had dial-up modems to send it, and the sad part was it actually, in technology world, it actually looked like you drew the picture with Crayolas, like 64 different color Crayolas, because that's all it was capable of, just a few color palette. And so that's where, the computer, the technology, the storage, the capture device, that's what led us into producing that database, which led into more and more storage for corporate clients. And then that started taking a life of its own. We needed more and more bandwidth for moving images around the world. We used to have a huge FedEx bill moving transparency slides around. Then it became moving DVDs and CDs in FedEx, and then it became fiber optic networks. In fact, one of my favorite stories, Level 3 at the time, we had a fiber connection with them, and my sales rep invited me to a dinner. And we went to a dinner, and the gentleman that was in charge of multi-state region for Level 3, we were talking before dinner, having cocktails, and I said, I'm Scott Brown, nice to meet you. And he looked up and went, "Oh, you're Scott Brown." And I said, "Yeah, great to meet you." And then I thought it was a very weird interaction. And so saw my sales rep about 2 weeks later. I said, "Ron," I said, what was that? And Ron said, "Well, you're a photography studio that has one of the largest fiber pipes in Richmond in the corporate world. And so he thinks you're into porn." And so I said, no, we house hundreds of thousands of NASCAR pictures. That's the only porn we have is NASCAR.
Car porn,
and I said, "So did you tell your boss that we don't do porn?" And so for the longest time, the person that was in charge of multi-state for Level 3 thought I was my housing of images was solely porn related. And so when he met me, he kind of took a step back, and I was like, "That's a weird interaction." I'm like, "We don't do that." So it was quite an interesting story. Yeah, it was interesting, and that was my introduction to fiber networks and Sienna hardware. That when they brought the network in, and I learned an incredible amount back then.
So if you're not taking pictures anymore, how are you getting your creative outlet? Are you doing that through the Pixel Factory stuff?
I still oversee some of the projects. I still shoot some things, like at the Masters. I was shooting the golf tournament itself, and still I was working overseeing the team of all the photographers feeding the Masters.com website and working with IBM. So it's still a creative outlet. It's still moving images, and still the technology is, I guess it's what, with shooting pictures, it was always, you had to envision something in your head, you had to envision how to light it, how to set it up, and now with the technology, you have to envision, all right, well, I've got to get connectivity from point A to point B. It's still it's still a creative challenge. How do you land 100 gig networks in certain places and then branch them off? And really funny part, we leased dark fiber from Richmond to Ashburn. And I remember calling a friend of mine that's an Expo rep for the test equipment. And I called him and said, hey, we just signed for a dark fiber network and we're lighting our first DWDM wave into Ashburn. And he goes, what? I go, yeah, we're lighting our first DWDM wave and I've never done this. Can I get a little help? And he goes, let me get this straight. You signed for dark fiber lease for 150 miles worth of fiber and you've never installed DWDM equipment in your life? I said, well, no, I looked at a lot of technical manuals and stuff and realized that it was all based on light, which it's the lambdas, the wavelengths are all photography principles. The light fall off and the regeneration is exactly the same. A lot of mathematical formulas in photography for light. So it was a natural fit for learning about the fiber and the DWDM stuff. So it was crazy how the physics principles in photography applied directly to the fiber principles. They were some of the same principles that I had learned in college about photography. So that's where I kind of fell into it. And surprisingly, we actually lit, because I was like, hey, man, this is going to be tough making my first payment on a fiber lease that we may not have a system in place running and passing any data. And first month, we actually turned it up and we're passing 10 gig waves. And it was about 7 years ago. And, for us doing a 10 gig wave out of the gate, that was crazy. And then we did multiple 10 gigs. Now we're doing multiple 100 gigs. And so, the photography helped tremendously figure out the principles of the physics of stuff. But awesome. We did take some big gambles.
Yeah.
I hear you talking about application of information. My kids are always telling me, I'm never going to use this again. This, whatever it is that I'm learning right now in school, I'm never going to use this again. And I keep having to tell them it's going to come up in the most unexpected ways that you would never anticipate.
Never thought fiber would ever equate to inverse square law of light traveling out of a flash for a camera. It's the same principles for fiber optics. And I was floored because I was like, oh my gosh, I understand this. I get it out of the gate. I got it. It was funny.
So you actually use some Microtek and some Ubiquiti hardware. Where does your data center world meet the WISP world? Can you talk about those projects that we've done?
Which part? You mean like the theme parks and stuff?
That or the track?
Oh yeah, we
media infield.
Yeah, so we with NASCAR, there was a unique problem all the time with NASCAR. They would need to order circuits for 3 days out of the year, or at least maybe twice a year. So the local incumbent would charge them $7,000 or $8,000 per T1 for 30 days worth of use, and they would buy 10 of them. And still was nowhere close to enough bandwidth. When we started with this database, the photographers at the track were pushing images toward our database, and 2 or 3 photographers could swamp their entire network capacity leaving the racetrack. And it was brutal. With the connectivity all being shared, and 2 photographers with the volume of images they were pushing could flood the entire network. So we ended up, Justin, and worked on this project where we actually lit. We shot, what we shoot? Air fibers?
Yeah, it was air fiber to the grandstand. And then we had Microtek, and it was a Ubitek from Baltic Networks that we bought. It was a Ubiquiti sector antenna with a custom box in the back for the Microtek the guts to go in the inside, and then you had, I think it was just those panel antennas that we were building at the time.
Yep.
They were dual pole panel antennas. It's a long time ago. It was wireless N only at the time.
Yeah, this was, gosh, how many years? Was this 12 years ago or 15 years ago?
Something like that. It was a while ago.
So for the 3-day weekend, we were pushing all the files out and completely off of the tracks public-facing network, pushing files out, and basically it was 3 hops back to the data center. So blowing files out incredibly quick. The only thing
it was 1 hop back to the data center, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, because of the fiber, because of the metros. So it's essentially the 2 air fibers, and that was it. But the only thing we didn't anticipate was in the radio line, the helo pad for shuffling people in and out of the racetrack. The helos, depending on which direction the wind was blowing, they would take off and fly right through the air fibers, and we would have this little blip when the helicopters would pass through the air fibers. It was
they use helicopters to put people in the middle of the racetrack.
Most of the tours.
It was mostly tours. Yeah. It was race teams flying in. They would shuttle them into the track. The drivers shuttling in.
Weird.
So they would probably have, I would guess, between 200 and 500 flights in and out of the racetrack. Easily that many. And so I used to go up in the helicopters and shoot the start of the race and do the aerial photography at the start of the race. And then when we flew in, and that's the only reason I was able to connect the dots, because when we landed, when the wind was blowing the wrong direction, we came right in, and I'm like, we're going through the air fiber path, and it was that was the blip. I'm like, and the air fiber, the helicopter stirs up enough disturbance in the air with static electricity and all kinds of crazy stuff. And it was probably, less than 50 yards from one of the air fiber units, because it took off right by the grandstands and went right by it and went right over top of it. So we did all kinds of stuff like that with Busch Gardens, one of the corporate clients. We put up a set of antennas on one of the roller coasters. So anywhere in the park, we could do live streaming for some of their Hallow Scream events, and do the webcams in the park, and shoot back to the media, the marketing office, and then push it out over the internet to stream back to a live streaming server, so people could watch everybody getting scared in the haunts. Yeah. Justin designed some of the radios for that. In fact,
the Bolton racetrack too, or it was the Bolton grand opening, and they had the cameras on the cars as they were going around.
We live streamed that, and then you don't know the outcome of what one of the ones you helped me. One of the race teams. This is kind of interesting. They shoot pictures of the displacement of the body, where the wheels are, and it's just a single frame that shows the body, how much it's torquing, and there's marks on the body that show the race teams how to tune their car in the turns. So the photographers plugged into a wireless box on the track shooting, and it's transmitting in real time. Then it's going to the AWS cloud, and they're pulling data off of that, and then they're pulling the telemetry in, and it sends them real time adjustments for the car. Well, the particular car manufacturer, there's 42 teams. Everybody's got a pit box. Everybody's got wireless on the pit box from their trailer. Well, there's only so much frequency and bandwidth available, so many channels. We actually ended up using a military radio, and I was assisting them at getting the camera to communicate and keep the radio awake. If the radio didn't see any chatter on the Ethernet side, it would shut down. And so the race teams, the actual manufacturer, basically got these radios that were super high powered. And they basically just walked over everybody else's wireless signals, because there's with 42 teams out there, everybody's when you start carving the channels up, whoever's talking the loudest and they got the best signal is going to wipe everybody else out. And so they were you actually indirectly helped Justin basically knock some other NASCAR teams off some channels so they could actually send out their data, so they could tune their race cars. This was way back in the early days.
we had that sector up, and it was a 120-degree sector, I think, and it would pick up the whole infield, right? And so we could do a scan and do a channel scan and see, what channels were in use, and you would see it crank up quite a bit. Like the very first day of a race, the number of networks that you would see would increase exponentially. It was,
Yeah, on a Tuesday it was flat scan,
Yeah.
and then when the race hit on a Friday or Saturday, it was just the graph was just obliterated.
Yeah.
What do they say? No plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess most recently they hired AT&T, I think, or someone to come in and do a Wi-Fi through the whole place, and they added tons and tons of access points, broadcasting in 80 megahertz channel sizes all over the place.
Ugh.
It's just a disaster now. So,
Yeah.
It's trashed.
yeah.
Yep.
I think
So
that sector's
we've
still
had a
up
lot of
there,
interesting
actually.
stuff. Yeah, a
So-
lot of interesting stuff over the years to get to, where the data center's grown. So a lot of interesting stuff.
Well, tell me more about the data center. So whenever you built it, did you have expandability in mind? What kind of redundancy were you accounting for? Like,
So-
give me the dirty.
Yeah, so we've got just like the normal stuff, multiple paths into the data center, multiple fiber entry points, an A side and a B side UPS in different halves of the building, all the above. When we first built it, we were unsure in the Richmond market if we were going to, was it a viable thing? I mean, I had no idea. I jumped into the industry with little or no knowledge about it. We were probably, I guess, 7 months into construction and almost about a month out of completion. And Richmond QTS announced 1 million square feet.
Woof.
And I looked up and I went, oh, this is going to be bad. And fast forward to the first year after that, it was actually fantastic. They've been a great partner. We don't compete for the same customers. They're I think 34 countries, a global corporation. We absolutely don't compete for the same customers. Our largest deployment's probably a 4 or 5 rack customer, so we just totally different industries we're competing for, and so we work great together. I've sent them some customers, they've sent me customers, and we've worked pretty seamlessly in the Richmond market to improve it. And they've been a great partner.
That's awesome. I know in my Fivertown days, it was a lot the same. I've noticed that the really big boys, like your Cyrus Ones or whatever, or your Cincinnati Bells, whatever you want to call them, whoever the holding companies or your Equinixes, those guys are so big, they're chasing whales, right?
Yes.
And whenever they get those whales, I'm sure they treat them fine, but anybody that is not anywhere near that size basically gets swept out with the trash. And so I've noticed if you go to a smaller data center provider, you're going to get more of like a white glove experience, right? They're really going to take care of you. Every customer is their biggest customer. You know what I mean? It's that kind of feeling that every customer is important to them. Yeah. Every customer is important. They're not just some serial number or something like that. That's where the big disconnect has happened for me. It seems like, I don't know, it's sort of weird. Like technology tends to push us apart, it seems, or makes us a little bit more cold in our communications and stuff. And in the digital world, when you're talking about data centers, it's those small providers that realize you're a human, that you have human needs, and if you need a call, right, and something taken care of quick, you can actually do that with a small provider. Whereas Equinix, if I wanted something done, I would call into the call center in New Jersey. They would then route me to the data center. I couldn't call directly into the data center. This wouldn't give me anybody's name to like work with over there. You know, it was so impersonal. It was so clunky. They couldn't, this is not a nice analogy, but I always envision them as the Titanic. They can see the iceberg, but for the life of them, they can't turn out of the way, right? They're just too big and too much momentum pushing in that direction. Whereas the smaller guys, you can actually pivot to take care of folks.
So along those same lines, I can tell you we've experienced it. We have fiber that runs up to Ashburn, and we connect into a facility up there. We had a new cross connect show up in our rack, and we were expecting 3 different content providers, and we didn't know which one it was. And the content provider didn't supply us with a cross connect number. So I called into the big provider's help desk, and the guy said, well, I don't see who ordered it. And I said, all right, well, he said, I'll research it. And so about 2 hours later, he called me back, and he said, oh, it's Microsoft. I said, okay, thanks. I'll reach out to my contact. So I didn't know which one to reach, and I had already emailed all 3 of them. And end of the month cycled, and I got a bill for $400 from that large data center to look up the ID and equate it to just a name. They billed me for 2 hours of research on the cross connect to see who it belonged to. So
Equinix one time, I needed them to just look and see if the power light was on a piece of equipment. They walked by the rack, looked in, left. I mean, it was probably a total of 10 minutes. They charged me $250 to look in that rack. It was bonkers. It's just crazy. It's crazy because at no other place in society would you treat people like that. You know what I mean?
Nope.
It's crazy. It's like, I see you're going into anaphylactic shock, but if you want this syringe, right? If you want me to hit you with this EpiPen, I'm gonna need you to pay me $400 real quick.
We're gonna charge you for it.
Yeah, I'm gonna need you to pay me now, and then we'll. Okay, yep. Okay, good. We're good.
Well,
it's crazy.
And I'm going to charge you extra because I'm going to look at you look like you're not doing well, but can you pay the bill first?
Yeah. Instead of just doing what the right thing is, taking care of you, and then working on it later. So I know I'm not there anymore, so I could talk about it. But when we started out, we really cut our teeth with trying to differentiate ourselves because we were the smaller provider. Differentiate ourselves with customer service, right? Because I got tired of dealing with data centers that were like that, and I wanted to be the opposite. So we were like 30 minutes or less, whatever it was, we were just going to do it free, right? So if we need to go reboot something, we were going to take care of it. Now, I'm not saying that's for everybody and not every market that's sustainable. It depends on how many people you have there, right? Do you have 24/7 folks there? If you do, it's not that big a deal, right? So I'm not bagging on anybody. It's just, I remember the day they decided to take that away, and I was like, this is not the right thing. You know what I mean? It's like we'd always cut our teeth with, do what you know is the right thing, and then we'll work it out after that. And eventually we went back to it, right? But I don't know. I just something in somebody. So the guy that used to own the company always said, never do anything you think you're going to have to apologize for. And I always thought that was really true, and you could carry that into a lot of places, especially in business. Don't do anything you think you're going to have to apologize for. And so I have gotten so many apologies from so many big vendors. You know what I mean? It's like, why do that stuff to begin with? I don't understand it. But you said you have A and B power, so I want to pivot a little bit over to that. Did you start with A and B, or did you build it with A only and then bring B in as you started getting customers, or what?
Yeah, so we started with A and B power in a single room, and then realized some of our shortcomings, and then split it to different halves of the building a little bit later on. So they were, the rooms were isolated from each other. So in case we had an issue, like say one of the UPSs had a fire.
So you actually physically relocated it to the opposite end of the building.
Yes,
that's perfect.
So for a small place, that was a big change for us.
It's a big undertaking.
Big undertaking. So now we feed from both sides of the building. Yeah.
You started off with a much smaller building, and then you expanded. You added that styrofoam concrete poured slab section.
Yeah. So we originally started out. When we started, we just put some equipment in one of our sections of the building that we had, and then some people from the previous data center that we were in caught wind, and we had 13 customers come up, basically show up and go, hey, we know you don't do it as a data center, but Richmond's too expensive. We don't want to be in Ashburn. We know you have fiber. We know you have a generator. Can we come into your building? And after the 13th customer came in, we went, okay, there's a need for a middle tier data center in Richmond. And that's when we built the second building, which was 8-inch thick. All four walls were a single pour, 8-inch thick concrete. So it was built like a bunker. And that's, and then right after that, it just kept going and going. And then we realized that competing for price for circuits was very difficult because we weren't a big enough player. We only had a couple carriers in the building, and Richmond being a tier 2 market, we had some customers that were, you get a price A for this location. That's a great price. Well, if they're the only provider at customer B, the price shot through the roof for customer B because there was no other providers around there, and they knew they could charge more. So it wasn't a competitive landscape. And when we actually procured the dark fiber going to Ashburn, game changer, leveled the playing field for us. All of the carriers started treating us as a facility. Some of them wanted to build in. So it was a big change. It was a very nice change. But before it was not. It was, it was a salesman's market. Whatever number you could come up with and you could get away with it, it was a little tough. But that's all changed, and we've now got much better feet to stand on, much better legs.
So how many carriers do you have built in right now?
Let's see, 6 or 7.
That's pretty good. That's really good.
So for Richmond, it's actually a big accomplishment. And then
as many exchanges, probably, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we actually, that was one thing we did for connectivity for a data center, which is unusual. We actually started building better connectivity for the house blend of bandwidth. Instead of just getting 2 tier 1 carriers, we started connecting into exchanges because we saw the value and the benefit. And then as we started growing that, then we realized that Skywire and a couple other companies, RichWeb and our company Pixel Factory, started the exchange to better the content and to leverage. It's expensive to light long haul up to Ashburn since Richmond's. There's not a lot of routed presence in Richmond. It's usually most of the carriers are metro to a node in Richmond, and then the metro back up to a larger, to Ashburn, and then it's a routed presence in Ashburn. So we started the exchange trying to make the content better in Richmond, and we landed a couple universities to join the exchange, and then they kept growing, and so we've been chasing better content, better connectivity, and it's helped the Richmond market. It's helped all the WISPs around the market, get more aggressive and actually build.
The electric co-ops as well.
Yep.
Don't forget about those guys.
Yeah, so the exchange landed, some electric co-ops to come in, and what they are is the electric co-ops are in the southern part of Virginia. They're building fiber to the home because they realized that it's quite interesting. So the electric co-op had X number of people in their jurisdiction, and they were realizing that their average ratepayer was 57. The average age of somebody moving out was 20 or 21. And they were leaving because there was no good internet connectivity. After they went to college, they'd come home. There was no good internet connectivity, so they were leaving. So the electric co-ops were like, wait a minute, if we lose all our ratepayers, electricity is pretty straightforward and simple in Virginia. It's cost of electricity plus a fixed rate of profit regulated by the State Corporation Commission. Well, as you run out of ratepayers, the cost per unit goes up. So the electric co-ops realized that they were going to have to do something to make a difference so they wouldn't lose their ratepayers. So they actually started building fiber, and they didn't want to use the local incumbents to either haul them out of their locality because they may compete in some of the areas. So they didn't want to have them as being their provider for their transport and then also their provider for their bandwidth. So they actually got hauled into the data center over it's a group that NBC that handles just transport only in the tobacco region of Virginia. And so we actually service a lot of those electric co-ops as a head end. So they pick up their bandwidth and they transport into here, and they're members of the exchange. And so that helped grow with all the eyeballs. And they're adding, I think they're up to 2,000 households a week being added on all these electric co-ops with fiber to the home. They're building as fast as they can build.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you think about it, the electric company, they have the right of way, right? They have the poles going everywhere. I know the electrical guys, I think BTU, Bryan Texas Utilities around here, whenever they're running their poles, I think the top wire is hollow, all the way through the line. So they go ahead and run fiber through it anyway. And so they're not actually doing fiber to the home, but just the idea that they're already doing that, right? They've already got a fixed conduit. They've already got a path. They have to get to your house anyway. They've got, they've got the tools, they got the talent. So they might as well take advantage of that. So I think it is an absolute no-brainer to start doing that stuff. I don't know
even on
why
top of
everybody's
that,
not doing it.
So there is a unique piece to that really it's nobody's really fully aware of. So all of the substations, they're getting to the smart grid where they can switch circuit breakers to change the feed and the direction for the power, the way it flows. And a lot of these electric co-ops, they were cellular based. And so the cellular service was not that good a quality. So they were switching circuits to transition, and the cellular service, their monitoring systems weren't getting updated fast enough. The grids needed to be more robust and so now I think Homeland Security mandated that all the larger utilities secure their substations with fiber to prevent for terrorism and stuff. And so the smaller electric co-ops, I don't believe that was mandated for them, but they saw it coming. So pulling fiber to get from substation to substation passes by a ton of homes. So that was also a win-win. They were able to increase the smart grid technology and have the fiber to control it, and then also pass by the homes to offer them internet connectivity. And also it kept the ratepayers in that jurisdiction, because now they've got fiber to the home. They can do telemedicine. They can do remote schooling. So it was a win for those areas that were losing people at a staggering rate, that were moving out of the jurisdiction because they were going to cities or localities that had better connectivity. And cellular service is also very spotty in those areas because they're spread out. 5G is a long way before it hits those markets.
Yeah. I'm also part of the InfraGuard program. It's an FBI-run group, right, where they have little SIGs all over the place, special interest groups. And it's really about securing America's infrastructure. And so one of the things they talk about in the meetings is, if there is some kind of mass issue, if there is some kind of natural disaster. I mean, it doesn't even have to be man-made. It could just be a natural disaster, and you have, say there's utilities that are down, right? So you have fiber services that are broken or whatever. Everybody's going to overload the cell system. So it's just not going to work. If you don't have alternate means of communications, if you don't have something in place for yourself, you can't rely on the cell service to be there when things get really bad, and that's probably going to be one of the more important times for those guys to be able to maintain connectivity to all that infrastructure, right? To be able to, if things are breaking, going down, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, Sandy showed that up in New York when the copper plant, when it took out the copper plant, it took out some of the fiber backhauls for all the cell towers. And so all those cell towers were down. The cell towers were up and communicating, just no backhaul. So definitely, those electric co-ops are definitely, adding new connectivity in the rural markets, and then they came back because we're a neutral facility, so it's a win-win. And then the content providers, the more eyeballs, the more content providers were showing up. So it's been a win-win for the whole ecosystem we've been working on.
Gotcha. So you're talking about the exchange. That was RVIX, is that what it was called?
Yeah, Richmond, Virginia Internet Exchange, RVIX. That is correct.
Okay, so you were
quick tangent. I've been looking at your websites and whatnot, and I noticed that your IPv6 IP addresses for your members include the ASN. That's the first time I've seen that, and I thought, that's clever. That's clever.
Well, I cannot take credit for that, and I did not know that was actually on the site.
That was probably a mistake.
What is it, colon with the ASN on the end of it? Or something. Yeah, so yeah.
We did do that. Yeah.
Totally, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I just kind of let my guard down on that one. I should have said, yeah, thanks. I thank the kind comment, Mike, but it was not my skill set.
On our exchanges, we just do, I think we skip one. First route servers 2, second route servers 3, and it's just next customer is 5, next customer is 6, next customer is 7. Like we just off we go.
Yeah,
but that's creative.
All right.
Anyway,
so
continue.
You have RVIX. You're building your connectivity. You're bringing more people in, and now we have the new announcement with DE-CIX, right? Or DE-CIX.
Yeah,
How do you say it?
Yep. DE-CIX. German. DE-CIX.
Ah.
Yep. So yeah, it was Justin and I and the rest of the board members have been working on that for almost a year. COVID did slow it down a lot. We thought it was a natural progression DE-CIX out of the gate has a standard, like Microsoft will fully come in. They've got a global agreement with Microsoft, so Microsoft will fully come in. Right now, we've got Microsoft is on the exchange now, but it's a limited subset of Microsoft services. It's just a couple servers that are processing, all the Microsoft Office 365 content and stuff, and we provide them cache fill. And so it is a factor of, if it's a 10 gig on the cache fill, we get 10, 20, 30 gigs on the backside. But DE-CIX out of the gate brings in the full Microsoft suite, where they bring in 100 gig connectivity in, typically probably diverse locations potentially. So the adding, DE-CIX taking the lead and charging forward with this is going to bring some to the Richmond market substantial connectivity into the IX out of their basic palette. Just their default deployment with who they bring in is going to be substantially larger than we could ever land on our own.
So just as much as you could say, so RVIX has been purchased by DE-CIX, and like what happens to the board? Do you guys still have a say in what goes on, or is it fully DE-CIX now, or what's the story there?
So RVIX was a nonprofit. The nonprofit will be closing down, and DE-CIX will be charging forward with the platform. I can say that DE-CIX is. I've been on their advisory board for the North American group on the DE-CIX advisory board for probably a couple years now, and talking to DE-CIX about localities they were deploying when they deployed in New York and then deployed in Dallas. We connected into Dallas because that was a great. We've just seen when DE-CIX came into New York, they took a substantial lead with connecting ASs in a rapid pace, and then when they deployed in Dallas, the same thing happened. They deployed at a rapid pace. Their platform it's fantastic, very easy to use, simple. And this is not a plug. We use this. The data center used the DE-CIX platform long before they ever approached us to merge and to take the assets to go forward. But we have been using the DE-CIX platform for several years and thought it was amazing. We actually. The data center connected into New York, and then we actually purchased capacity over to Germany. And it's kind of funny, in the U.S., this is actually, I know what you're going to laugh at. So in the U.S., the data center had about 80 direct peers. The day we lit up in Germany, I think we hit 700 peers off the route servers.
Holy
That's
cow.
not what I'm laughing at.
Which part?
I'm laughing about the first issue we had based on that, where the AS
gaming
length
servers?
to the game servers in Europe are the same length to get to the US. So we had people with ping times of 100 plus milliseconds playing on servers in Germany, because the New York exchange was just one hop away. So
oh no,
it was. That was what I was laughing at.
That is very. I did forget that because because of the way DE-CIX's platform is set up, we were essentially one hop out of Germany, and it was our router pairing with their router, and so we had to do a little bit of traffic engineering to make sure that Fortnite was not going to Germany to get its real time game. And Justin called me and was like, "Dude, what did you do?" He said, "I got tickets coming out of the rear end." And I go, "Well, we lit Germany this afternoon. We got 700 peers." And he goes, "Yeah, but 100 of them are the game servers that we don't want to go to."
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I know I've only been to one Nanog, and I actually ran into you there. One of the few faces that actually came and found me, which was pretty cool. And I liked you immediately. I think people can obviously tell, even if you're just listening, this guy is the nicest guy you'll ever meet. And he'll talk to you about anything at length. That's really good. But we're talking to the DE-CIX guys. I had nothing but positive interactions with them. Everybody I've talked to that's peered with them have had good things to say. Really smooth operation. So They're definitely leaders. And you know what? Whenever they would contact me, like the sales guys would call me, they weren't pushy. You know, they were just calling, hey, you know, we turned up this number of peers. If you're interested, you know, come on, it'd be really cool. And then they're like, oh, not right now. Okay. Yeah,
So let me give you a story. So we turned up New York, and when we turned up Germany, in the DE-CIX portal, the drop down was confusing. It merged my traffic together, so I couldn't see how much traffic we were flowing to Germany and how much I flowed because the way the drop down was. And I sent a note in to the support desk, and about 2 hours later, I got an email that said, please try it now. And I went back and looked, and they had retuned the website to break it out and change the drop-down menu so I could separate my traffic. I haven't seen customer service, you know, like that, especially, you know, you're hitting a support desk for connectivity, not website. And they went in and tuned it. And they're like, hey, that makes sense. Now, that could be some of the German logic going, well, you know what? He pointed out it doesn't make sense this way. And they went, we'll fix it. But they addressed it, changed it, sent me a notification. And I was like, this is great. And we've had great response. And this was long before, the discussion ever came up about DE-CIX launching in Richmond. So it's been a positive experience all the way around as a customer with them. So it's been great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, that's cool. So that's that's a tremendous feather in your cap, right? Having those guys in-house.
Well, thank you very much. It's greatly appreciated, but it was a team effort. I mean, Justin, Sean Larson, Scott Kuhnfield, Lon Welchel, a whole group of people were involved in this. In the discussions and putting it together. You know, we bounced around numerous ideas. Does it make sense? Does it, you know? And if you think about it, so Ashburn is 70% of the world's traffic, I think, flows through Ashburn. When we see Ashburn sneeze, the rest of the markets get severely affected. And so our traffic, when Ashburn has an issue, our traffic goes to New York, and it hits New York, and a lot of the people we peer with, it hits New York and does a hairpin turn and comes back to Ashburn to where the problem was with packet loss. So this is going to bring Richmond to the forefront. We're 3 milliseconds off Ashburn, maybe 3.5 milliseconds. So almost an insignificant number in latency, just across town. And so now with the subsea cables coming in, and the connectivity from the Maria and the Brusa cable, and I think the Denant, and I think the SEAX is going to Africa. I believe that's still in schedule. And then also the Confluent cable that's going to go up the East Coast and stop in New Jersey, New York, Virginia Beach. It'll extend into Richmond, Virginia Beach, Myrtle Beach, Jacksonville. That cable's gonna be 1 mile off. It'll actually be lower latency to New York on that subsea cable than terrestrial. So all of a sudden, Richmond is lower latency to Europe, lower latency to South America, and it'll be lower latency to New York if that Confluent cable is a go. So all of a sudden, Richmond has better latency to a lot of the major markets than going north on terrestrial.
That's awesome. Well, next time I see you guys, you'll have to all show me your matching DE-CIX tattoos that you're getting.
We did. Yeah. We got DE-CIX. Everybody got a DE-CIX tattoo.
No, but this just made me think about a lot of our listeners are wireless ISPs or just ISPs, guys transitioning to fiber, guys just doing fiber. It runs the gambit. You got all types. So imagine, if you will, I'm a WISP and I've got one provider. So I'm pulling my internet connectivity from a single person, right? I'm getting to the point where I need to expand. I can either just increase my overall pipe on the one provider I have, or I could go for additional redundancy, right? My one provider, while they are pretty reliable, they have problems sometimes, right? We all do, right? So everybody's got a bad day.
Yes. Everybody has a bad day.
So one of my alternate options could be, I could be pulling into a data center like Pixel Factory and hitting that internet exchange. So what's the pros and cons, you would say, for somebody in that position, as opposed to just increasing their pipe or maybe going to another CenturyLink or level 3, why would you suggest they go to kind of an internet exchange in lieu of those?
One, the cost per megabit substantially reduced for going to an exchange compared to, now granted, you don't get full transit, which is the entire AS, all the connectivity, but one of the flexibilities the data center can do is we've gotten really creative. A lot of facilities don't let you either come in, cross connect, and you only go to one connection. And also, if they let you go to more than one connection, they make you take a presence in the data center. Because we're smaller and flexible, we have allowed some groups to come in and don't take a presence in the facility, and we carry VLANs back. And so they can buy transit and connectivity into the IX over that same metro. And now they've got the best of both worlds. They've got another transit provider, and they've got the content. And they may not have to buy. So say if they're coming in at 10 gig, they may not have to buy 10 gigs of transit. They may only need 1 gig of transit, and they're picking up 9 gigs of content, or maybe they're sub rate of 10 gig, and so they've got all that free capacity on that pipe that's being untapped. The catch is a lot of carriers that when you come in, that's one of the flexibilities. In the larger data centers, you go cross connect and it goes into one provider.
Yeah.
And so we've got it to where we can, we burn an extra port on, some of the routing infrastructure. So there's a slight increase in cost, but our cost structure compared to a larger facility and our cross connects are substantially lower. So it's not, not a comparable apples to apples, bigger facilities.
If I'm here in my little town and I'm trying to get DIA from a provider, it's going to cost X price. And if I'm still getting that same DIA over that pipe, right, where I'm getting the internet exchange and I'm getting that transport, that same DIA is going to cost me a fraction of what it'd be if I just asked them for the local connection, right?
Yes, and on top of that, so say you're getting connectivity, you pick one provider to provide you your second path. Well, when you come into the data center, you've got potentially 6 different carriers for that. You can ask all of them for price points. So now they're competing. And before, you're only getting price from one carrier, one path out. That one carrier has a bad day, you're in trouble. Where you do this blended solution, you're getting DIA, and you could, you may lose that transit that direction, but you still have the content from the exchange. And some of the actual providers are on the exchange. So traffic destined to that provider will go to that provider. So in other words, like a Hurricane Electric, they're on the exchange. If you have traffic that's destined to Hurricane Electric, it'll transit over the exchange to get to those destinations. So, you may pick another provider for your DIA and on the exchange. So you're actually getting, some routes from the transit provider, like a Hurricane, that they carry those bits to the end destination. So it's a win-win from that aspect. And incredibly, the big thing is we're not a large company. So when you call in, the same 4 or 5 people in the facility, and everybody knows who to talk to. Everybody knows what's going on. So it's a win-win. I'm thrilled. I love going to speak up in Ashburn. The last time I was up speaking in Ashburn, they started the introductions, and I believe, I can't remember, I prefer not to say which data center was on the stage with me. And it was roughly about a $500 million company, and the other company was about probably $750 million company. And then they introduced me and they said, Scott Brown, he's got a 10,000 square foot facility in Richmond, Virginia. And there was a room of 700 people that looked up and went, what?
Huh?
And so it's funny because the groups that they always call me the outlier, because I'm always, people come up afterwards and go, it's a fresh approach to hear somebody talk about this, instead of saying we're the big 800-pound gorilla and this is the way it's going to be.
I was just thinking everybody looked up because they thought, Scott Brown, isn't that the guy that does all the porn? That guy?
No, yeah. Yeah. That still does haunt me from years back. That still does haunt me.
You're the guy that's different. You're the guy that's being disruptive and a different way of looking at things. Love it.
I was the guy foolish enough to lease dark fiber and never lit a DWDM wave in my life, and had already signed for the dark fiber. And had to had many sleepless nights going, okay, we get to pay the first bill and we're not using it for the month.
I don't think you are as unique in that experience as you would assume. I've seen so many people in the Slack say, all right, we've got the circuit turning up and we got to put some DWDM gear on it. What do you guys suggest? And so everybody starts firing off links. Here's this, here's this, here's this. It's pretty common occurrence, but I don't know that most people lease 150 miles day one, but
we did jump in deep.
It is a pretty strong motivator, though.
Correct.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, I would say it was actually. It was very aware that I had a motivation, to make it work, and and in fact, the dark fiber provider Summit IG has been fantastic to work with, flexible, always helpful. We have a great. I mean, it's kind of funny because maybe it's just not the experience. We have a great relationship, what I would say, with 99% of the companies we buy services from. We've got our long haul passes through Iron Mountain and Manassas. I cannot tell you how incredibly on the spot they are for everything. And I'm not looking to plug. I don't plug businesses. I plug people, and the people that work at that facility are just fantastic to work with. Same with QTS. They've always helped us immensely. And I don't get a dime. I don't get any discounts for saying these things. It's just you recognize good companies, and I enjoy working with them, and they treat me because I treat them well. They treat me well. It's a fantastic relationship. And it's just it's getting better and better. And the whole new DE-CIX solution with this, our facility, QTS, and the Edge Connect all being in a triangle, and then the subsea cables coming in and having Ashburn 3 milliseconds off. The big thing is they talk about this 15 millisecond latency is the new standard for real-time car communications, real-time communications on a cell phone. If you look where Richmond is located, and also the Chicago exchange for DE-CIX, you start looking at those concentric rings to keep that 15 milliseconds of latency. Richmond's a perfect location. New York to Richmond, and then Richmond down to Florida. It covers from Chicago east. It's going to be because of the way it's laid out. I think it's going to be a fantastic platform if you're looking at doing real-time communication for cars and for all the different stuff that's going on with technology.
Gotcha. Well, I see a note in here that I'm supposed to ask you about hollow fiber. I'm not sure what that means.
I've been really nerding and geeking out. High frequency trading. I just read an article the other day that they are now, when they blow the glass, they are now blowing it where the glass is hollow in the middle, and it actually picks up, because when you transmit light across a medium, which is glass, it slows it down. So now the fiber is nothing more than a hollow tube, and it's gaining a billionth of a millisecond.
Third of the speed of light. Because it's approximately 2/3 the speed of light in glass, the speed of light. So, you're getting that last third.
How does it do with bends?
I'm not sure, but they spent a lot of money. They spent a whole lot of money, and some of these high-frequency traders have now got the NX Edge. When Mike was talking about the plow, I know somebody that was involved at New York to Chicago cable for the high-frequency trading. They had a section that they couldn't get the right-of-way, and they were frustrated. They offered money and crazy amounts, and then they finally went, we can go 150 feet down. You do not own the land, the earth below you. So they put the fiber 150 feet under the property and went right under the property to bypass it to get that cable from Chicago to New York. And now, the high frequency traders have pushed the edge a little bit more, and they've been testing and deploying, hollow fiber, and it's, faster. I guess maybe they got the idea from Elon Musk with all the low Earth orbit satellites that they're shooting lasers between the two of them because they're using the vacuum in space to shoot the communication between them, shoot the lasers between them to get the speed.
A lot of that's 60 gigahertz too in space.
Yeah, yeah. So I can't wait. It's staggering to think that there'll be 60,000 satellites deployed in low Earth orbit for Starlink. And they're going to need to land somewhere on the East Coast to get their connectivity. So I think Richmond would be a wonderful place. I know a great exchange they can connect to get the content for the users.
Yeah, I'm sure they would love to put 10 or 15 racks in there. Make your day.
My understanding is it's pretty thin deployment for them. The last time I saw it was a semi-trailer flatbed with a bunch of small sat dishes that were motorized to track, and from there it was nothing more than a router to hand it off. They were doing very, very thin deployment.
Yeah, I still remember when they had the job posting up, which wasn't that long ago, for the network engineer to build all of that stuff. I think it was like a year and a half ago. Wasn't that long ago? Maybe 2 years at max.
About that.
Yeah. So they had already done announcements. They had already done some proof of concept stuff, and they still hadn't hired the engineer to build everything. It's like, so a cart before the horse a little bit, but far be it from me to say anything. I was thinking, man, that would be exciting, but God, would that be stressful? I don't.
I joke about with all our board and everything about how this big announcement about the DE-CIX in the Chicago, and it's funny because they announced Chicago and Richmond, and everybody was like, "What?" Technically, the data center's in Ashland, which is a subset of Richmond, and so it's in this small community. So we were on the same level playing field as the Chicago market. And now it'll be the New York, the Dallas, the Chicago, and Richmond. That just shocked me. But when you talk about the satellites and stuff, I look at our accomplishments and I look at Elon Musk, what he's done in the last 12 months, 24 months, where he's first private spaceship to land at the space station to take humans into space, first private one to re-land a rocket booster and reuse it, Starlink, and throwing up hundreds of satellites at a time. Tesla, sleeping on the floor. I look at myself and I go, wow. I got a little way.
Kid too.
Yeah.
Right
I forgot about that.
Had a kid.
Mix a kid in, and I mean, it's like I look at what we've accomplished, and I go, well, I gotta start banging a little harder to eke out a few more things. So
I used to have kind of a lot of imposter syndrome and stuff like that kicking around, especially when you start mixing in with people like this, like yourself, so accomplished. I mean, you were talking about all the peerings you were doing, and geez, you're going through the alphabet soup of all these people that you're connecting to. And I was just like, man, I've got like 3 to 6 peerings. I thought this was a lot, and I thought I was doing good, right? Or people like the Elon Musks and stuff like that, right? Those guys, they're a different breed. And I think everybody chooses to spend their time on something, right? And they choose to spend most of their time on other things, right? And those things bear them fruits that make them happy, and the things I choose to spend my time on bear fruits that make me happy, right? And so I think you're doing some amazing, you guys are kicking ass over there. It's crazy to see all the accomplishments. On top of that, you're a hell of a nice guy. Miller says you're a nice guy, then you're gonna be super duper solid for that kid to like you, because he hates everybody, especially Mike and me. He hates Mike more than me, though. So
he has helped us along immensely. I routinely will bounce stuff off him to validate my stupidity. He'll go, "Hey, what are you thinking?" And steer me in a better course.
Well, it's funny because he never steers me in the right course. I think he's a NASCAR fan, and he's there for the accidents. He wants to see you crash.
Yeah, correct. He's the onlooker. He's not the. So, but no, we've you know what? I'll be honest. We've gotten everywhere because of everybody else. I mean, that's the bottom line. With the Skywires and Justin and all those different guys, we've gotten where we've our plateau or our ceiling we've hit. We've gotten there because of everybody else. It's not just me. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that somebody else has introduced me to somebody else that has made the magical difference of,
Right.
hey, this is Scott. Well, Microsoft just sent us a cluster of servers because I met somebody at Nanog. And, and it's the people relationships, and it's been amazing. In fact, I'll tell you that I met you in, I guess it was Dallas when they had the Nanog in Dallas. Do you remember what happened in Dallas with that big, massive DNS Dyn attack that took out, 10 of the top 10 internet providers when Dyn got DDoSed and everybody in the Nanog jumped in? Everybody in the Nanog all jumped in as one team working to solve what was going on. And I was just amazed. All the different router people and all the peering people from the different groups. It was a bad day because, Amazon went down. A ton of people went down with that attack, and everybody jumped in at the Nanog and started solving it for each other. Even people that weren't affected jumped in, and so that's just it's a great community, and we've gotten to where we've gotten to this position because everybody else helps everybody else, and that's why we do the same. Yeah,
I think it's definitely a good moral to the story is collect people, right? Make connections.
Yeah.
I've always heard that there's like 3 kinds of friends. There's going to be a friend that will ask you for stuff and never give anything back. There's a friend that will ask you for something with the understanding that you'll reciprocate, and there's a friend that will do stuff for you and never expect anything in return. And I definitely, for good or for bad, I'm that middle road. So I will do anything for anybody, but I always expect my friends to reciprocate. And I think it's definitely building that community of folks like that. I can't say that exactly the experience I had at Nanog. I met a handful of really good people, but man, I felt like I was I felt like there was a lot of cliques and I just didn't fit in anywhere and I didn't really know anybody. So it was like pretty reticent to just start sticking my neck. Man, I was talking to some crazy people. Like, I think I was talking to like a guy from Facebook, the one that probably wrote the algorithms for meshing on Terragraph, because he was talking about how he's working on that stuff. And he basically wrote it over the course of, I think, just like a couple of weeks or something, just overnight. And he basically doesn't have a life outside of work and stuff. And that was very eye-opening for me. I was like, well, maybe I don't fit in here for a reason because I don't have that kind of dedication to anything. I can't even brush my teeth consistently or floss. Perhaps I don't quite fall in with these guys. I'm not sure. But I think it's you get a few guys, right? And then you get a few more and you get a few more. It builds, right? There is cliques at Nanog. There are a group of people that run together. I simply don't care. I'm going to come up and talk to you and ask, and I'm just going to do it. And if you don't want to talk to me, don't talk to me. And I've met some incredibly smart people, incredibly helpful people, and Martin Hannigan. Was Akamai at the time, and Martin stepped up.
Great guy.
Yeah, fantastic guy. Stepped up, told me how to solve A, B, and C, how to start the IX, who to talk to. Phenomenal person right out of the gate. And I could go down the list. There's tons of them. But there definitely is groups that run with each other in the Nanog segment.
I think most of my experience was just me being shy, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, but I'm going to go up and ask the question, and and I'll be the one because I'll give you a great example. So PTC is the conference in Hawaii, Pacific Telecom, something. It is all the C-level executives in globally from all the Asia markets and everything. And I went a couple years ago and met a couple people and I was always told, if you want to make it in this data center industry, you need to go to PTC. And I went out there, and like my second meeting, the guy said, "Scott, you're a real nice guy. when the light clicks and you recognize that the people you're talking to make decisions for the global worldwide networks and the buck stops with them and there's nobody above them, you're talking to the right person. And I went, oh, gotcha. I was, operating in the mentality of maybe lower down the tier and didn't realize, what kind of level PTC was. And, the people that I was meeting with, they're the ones that signed the check and had made all the decisions, and nobody else made the decisions of where, some of these global carriers were deploying. And that was, and I didn't realize who I was talking to. So I've also learned a lot about know your audience before you enter the room. But I've got a personality where I can get away with that because the guy said, "Look, I like the way you just seem like a nice guy, and hey, you'll get a lot further at PTC if you actually know your audience."
Yeah,
For sure. All right, Scott. Believe it or not, we are at like 2 hours and 15 minutes. So I would say we should probably stick a fork in it. I'm fairly certain I can continue to talk to you until it turns into tomorrow. But, perhaps if you have some time in the future, we'll get you back on here and talk a little bit
Absolutely.
More about this stuff. But this is generally how I wrap it up. I say, Scott Brown, if people on the internet want to get a hold of you, they're interested in Pixel Factory, they're interested in your peering, any questions, comments they have, how would you have them go about getting a hold of you?
Email scott@pixelfactorydc.com. Yeah, have them email me. I'll talk to anybody and everybody. Happy to help them. Happy to help because I'll learn something from their interaction. I'll learn, you always learn something new from somebody else. They always have something to teach you.
For sure.
So,
for sure.
Scott even talks to me, so.
Oh. Yeah, everybody likes to slum every now and then. No, there's an old phrase I like. It's be teachable because you don't know everything. So that's definitely the mentality I try and take into everything. I can always learn something. And so I scribbled a whole page full of notes. No, you can't see them here, but I learned a bunch of stuff today. So thank you very much for coming. Justin Miller, if you want people to get a hold of you out on the big bad internet, how would you have them do that?
Well, I am very active on the Little Brothers Slack. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. Definitely checking that all the time.
You're not going to pump the blog?
I don't really do a whole lot on the blog, but maybe I'll have to put some Ansible stuff up there, like, how to deploy CHR on a Proxmox cluster. Right, Mike?
Right.
Oh,
Baller.
there you go.
Yeah, I'll put
Baller,
that
do
up
the
there.
thing. All right.
Maybe if I get it up there.
Mikey Hammond, if you want people to get a hold of you out on the internet, what new and interesting way would you have them do that?
Well, so I will. It'll be basically the same answer, but I have a little preface to it.
Okay.
I'm looking at my how many windows and tabs I have open in Chrome at this exact moment. 74 windows, 531 tabs. So perhaps people should not get a hold of me because I'm way behind on my work.
Gotcha. All right. Well, if you want to get a hold of me, you can go to my blog, gregsoul.com, where I super regularly blog now that I am an SSA. I have tons of stuff so it's basically if I have to figure it out for a demo or for somebody else, if somebody asks me a question, then I'm definitely going to blog about it so that I can go back and look at it before my next customer engagement and remember how I did it. That has already occurred multiple times. You can also get a hold of me on Little Brothers with Slack. Slide into those DMs is super easy to get a hold of me, and that's patreon.com/LittleBrothersWisp, and then we will forward you over an invite to the Slack. I guess questions, comments, fire them away. Let us know, guys, and thanks, Mike. Thanks, Miller, and thank you, Scott, for coming. Everybody
Thanks,
say bye.
guys. It was a blast. Bye.
See ya.
All right, so now I click stop on all these different things. Hang on just a second for you.
Just give us a listen, cause fun is the mission. I'm telling you, you don't know what you are missing. Ideas and some good comedy given. If you missed the show already, don't worry, you're forgiven.